All right, so today's activity is called strengths-based interviewing, mostly because I couldn't come up with a better name. But we have two main goals here, right? The first is to give you a deeper and better understanding of what your strengths are and how you tangibly see them presenting themselves in real life. Two is actually to give you a little bit of practice doing something called the CAR method, which we'll go into more depth with. But being able to use that to sort of talk about your strengths more comfortably and confidently. One thing I'd say coming from an East Coast school is that, Laurentians don't talk about their strengths or are not able to sort of talk about their strengths and accomplishments as comfortably or coherently as I've seen people at other peer schools, right? And that can hurt us. So we want to give you some practice in doing this and get more comfortable, doing it, right? So I want you to think of looking at your top five strengths, I want you to think of two examples that demonstrate how you've used each of those strengths in the past few months, right? Maybe it was somewhere in an internship that you were working, maybe it was a course project, maybe it was a club or activity, whatever it is, regardless, I want you to think about two specific examples that demonstrate where you've used that strength before, right? And then I want you to talk about that experience using something we call the CAR method, right? So CAR standing for context, right? What was the problem that was laid out in front of you, or what were you trying to improve or solve, right? So laying out the context. Action, what was the specific action or actions that you took to remedy that or improve that situation? And then result, what was the positive implication of result or a thing that happened? I'd say more often than not, I see people not really sort of give the result, right? And then your narrative, your story is incomplete. So always ending on the positive implication of that, right? And I'd say this, it's natural to think about the perfect example and to search your mind for that perfect example, when oftentimes these are strengths that we're using in our daily lives, and the first thing that pops in your head is likely pretty good for an interview kind of scenario, okay? So don't ever think it. The goal here too is actually to give you practice really sort of doing this, all right? So that's it, context, action, results. Looking at your top five strengths, giving two examples demonstrating two of those strengths, okay? Now, I'll give you an example. Like for me, one of my top strengths is adaptability, right? So when COVID hit, I had to really think on my feet. How do I take all these programs and services and put them online? I immediately went into action getting an email out to the student body, laying out this sort of tentative plan as I had it. And then I was hopping on the phone, talking to people at different schools across the country, tapping my network to figure out what were the best practices that were happening, talking to staff to figure out where do their strengths really meet and how did these map and work in the online environment, and then immediately testing, right? Using my design background to test, iterate, and go from there, right? So the positive result that we saw from it, or one of them I should say, was we actually saw an increase in program attendance, and we actually got everybody on our team to be a lot more comfortable with distance programming, right? And that scales really well, right? So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight on how I want you to approach this activity. The challenge I'm going to lay out for you is to record two examples in under 4 minutes, right? So ideally, I want you spending somewhere between 2 and 4 minutes talking about these experiences, because I want you to give that adequate context, but at the same time, I don't want you to drone on. All right. So that's the challenge here. I know you can do it, and we're pumped to see what you come up with.